Let's look at the prompt. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion in the text as a whole? So, to understand the underlying portion, we have to understand what's going on overall. So, let's start reading. Horizontal gene transfer occurs when an organism of one species acquires genetic material from an organism of another species through non reproductive means. The genetic material can then be transferred vertically in the second species, that is, through reproductive inheritance. This scientist and her team have hypothesized infection by invertebrate parasites as a mechanism of horizontal gene transfer between vertebrate species. While feeding, a parasite could acquire a gene from one host, then relocate to a host from a different vertebrate species and transfer the gene to it in turn. So we're getting this highly disturbing biological description of how one organism can be infected genetically through sort of being passed a parasite. So let's just go through it again. They're explaining what horizontal gene transfer is. A further explanation here. Then we're describing the hypothesis from the scientist and her team that there's an infection by parasites. And in orange, which is the sentence we're being asked about, or the piece we're being asked about, while feeding, the parasite could acquire a gene from one host, then relocate it to a different species and transfer it. So we're getting a more detailed description of what they had just mentioned earlier. So let's see if that's in one of the answers. It explains why the parasites are less susceptible, kind of the opposite. It clarifies why some genes are more likely to be transferred. That's too specific for the underlying portion. C, it contrasts how horizontal gene transfer occurs, vertebrates versus invertebrates, which we're not seeing there. And D, it describes a means by which horizontal gene transfer might occur. So what's the means by which it might occur? That a parasite could acquire the gene, then relocate to a different host and transfer that gene. So that is the means by which this can happen. So the answer here is D.